In Hollywood, appearances have always been everything. Careers could rise or collapse overnight depending on how well a star played the part the public wanted to see. For decades, that meant projecting the perfect image of heterosexual romance. Beautiful wives, glamorous girlfriends, carefully staged photographs on the red carpet. But behind that glossy facade, some of the most famous men in the world were living very different truths. They entered marriages, fathered children, and smiled for the cameras, all while quietly wrestling with identities that didn't fit the script written for them. This isn't a story about betrayal or scandal. It's about human beings caught between two worlds, between the crushing weight of expectation and the undeniable pull of authentic love. Their journeys from secrecy to honesty reveal not only who they really were, but how an entire industry's understanding of love and masculinity was forced to change. Cary Grant, Hollywood's leading man with a hidden life. Cary Grant was the very definition of Hollywood elegance, tall, charming, sophisticated, and adored by audiences across the globe. On screen, he was the ultimate leading man, romancing the most beautiful women in cinema history. Off-screen, however, his personal life was far more complicated. For decades, rumors swirled about Grant's close relationships with men, particularly costume designer Ori Kelly and fellow actor Randolph Scott. After his 1935 divorce from actress Virginia Cherrill, Grant and Scott began living together on and off for years. Their shared home in Santa Monica quickly became one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets, whispered about by insiders, but never acknowledged publicly. Both men had tried and failed at heterosexual marriages, finding comfort instead in each other's company. Still, in an era when exposure could destroy a career, Grant remained silent. He reportedly took extraordinary steps to prevent Ori Kelly from publishing memoirs that might reveal too much. To keep suspicion at bay, he entered into a series of carefully staged marriages, 5 in total, each one reinforcing the image of Cary Grant as the perfect ladies' man. When he passed away in 1986, he left behind the legacy of a cinematic icon, but also the portrait of a man who never found the freedom to live openly. Behind the polished facade was a private truth Hollywood wasn't ready to accept. Clive Davis, the mogul who discovered himself, late in life. Clive Davis built his reputation shaping the careers of legends like Whitney Houston and Alicia Keys, but his most surprising discovery was much more personal: himself. For decades, Davis lived in what looked like a conventional heterosexual world, complete with 2 marriages and children. Then, in his 50s, one drunken night changed everything. In his memoir, Davis described a sexual encounter with a man that wasn't earth-shattering, but planted a seed of curiosity. That seed grew into a profound shift. Soon after, Davis separated from his wife and began exploring relationships with both men and women. Since the early 1990s, he's quietly shared his life with 2 long-term male partners, though he's kept their identities private. What makes Davis's story remarkable isn't scandal. It's his refreshingly matter-of-fact honesty. He never framed it as a dramatic coming out, but as a natural evolution of who he was. By speaking openly about his bisexuality in his 70s, Davis challenged the idea that sexual identity is fixed in youth. His journey showed that self-discovery can happen at any stage of life, even after building one of the most powerful careers in the music industry. For Clive Davis, authenticity didn't derail his success. It only deepened his legacy. Little Richard, the rock and roll, rebel at war with himself. Few entertainers were as flamboyant and electrifying as Little Richard. With his pompadour hair, eyeliner, and wild stage presence, he was one of rock and roll's true architects. Yet behind the glitter, he lived in constant conflict with himself. Richard's public statements about his sexuality swung like a pendulum. In a 1995 Penthouse interview, he openly identified as gay. But by 2012, he had reversed course, calling same-sex relationships unnatural. This constant flip-flopping reflected a man torn between his devout religious beliefs, his public persona, and his personal desires. His relationships with women only added to the confusion. He was married to Ernestine Campbell from 1959 to 1961 and also had a long romance with dancer Lee Angel. Both insisted that their relationships with Richard were real and passionate. Yet Richard never publicly confirmed a lasting relationship with a man, leaving fans and biographers with only speculation. What remains is the portrait of a genius caught in a lifelong identity crisis. His flamboyance on stage suggested freedom, but his words often betrayed fear and self-denial. Little Richard's story reminds us how crushing the weight of societal and religious pressure can be, even for someone bold enough to invent rock and roll itself. Freddie Mercury. Love beyond labels. Freddie Mercury's voice could shake stadiums, but when it came to his private life, he often struggled to find the right words. His 6-year romance with Mary Austin seemed to the world like a fairy tale, the charismatic frontman of Queen with the perfect partner by his side. But eventually, Mercury confessed the truth. He was attracted to men. Austin's response was both loving and blunt. "No, Freddie, you're gay." Though their romantic relationship ended, their bond only grew stronger. Mercury insisted on keeping Austin close, even buying her a home near his own. He often described her as the love of my life. When his health declined from AIDS, it was Mary who cared for him until his final days in 1991. Later, Mercury entered a long-term relationship with Jim Hutton, but Mary Austin remained central in his life. Their connection defied easy categories, not a romance, but deeper than friendship. For Mercury, love wasn't about labels. It was about loyalty, care, and connection. His story proves that even when sexual identity changes the shape of a relationship, true love can endure. Freddie Mercury left behind not just an unmatched musical legacy, but also a reminder that love is bigger than definitions. Elton John, from denial to true love. In the 1970s, Elton John was one of the biggest rock stars alive. In a groundbreaking 1976 Rolling Stone interview, he declared himself bisexual, a revelation that shook the industry. At the time, he was already living openly with his male manager, though he carefully balanced honesty with protecting his career. But just a few years later, fans were stunned when Elton married German sound engineer Renate Blauel in 1984. To the outside world, it seemed like a fairy tale romance. Behind the scenes, it was a desperate attempt to deny who he truly was. The marriage lasted only 4 years, ending in painful divorce. Decades later, Elton admitted his motivations, writing on Instagram that he had denied who I really was, expressing admiration for Blauel, but also guilt and regret. His story found resolution in the 1990s when he met filmmaker David Furnish. Their partnership grew into one of the most celebrated same-sex marriages in the world. They entered a civil union in 2005 and later married in 2014 on the 9th anniversary of that partnership. Elton's journey from bisexual declaration to heterosexual marriage to finally embracing his authentic life mirrors the struggles many LGBTQ+ people faced. Today, his marriage and family stand as proof that even the most complicated journeys can lead to love, honesty, and peace. Bryan Lourd, Hollywood's agent of change. Bryan Lourd wasn't just a Hollywood power player, he became part of one of its most unconventional love stories. In the early 1990s, Lourd was in a serious relationship with actress and writer Carrie Fisher, beloved for her role as Princess Leia. Their romance seemed promising enough that they decided to have a child together. In 1992, their daughter Billie Lourd was born, cementing what looked like a lasting family unit. But shortly after Billie's birth, Lourd made a decision that shocked Fisher. He left her for a man. To many, it looked like betrayal. Fisher, however, was characteristically honest and empathetic. She later explained that Lourd hadn't lied to hurt her. He lied because he wanted to be normal, because he wanted a child, and because he was afraid. Despite the end of their romance, Fisher and Lourd set an example in Hollywood by maintaining an exceptionally strong co-parenting relationship. They raised Billy together with love and mutual respect, proving that a broken romance doesn't have to break a family. Years later, Lourd found lasting happiness when he married restaurateur Bruce Bozzi in 2016. His story shows that living authentically may cause upheaval at first, but in the end, it can build families that are stronger and more honest than the illusion of perfection ever could. Elgin Charles, redefining love. After divorce. Known as the Emperor of Hair, Elgin Charles built a glamorous career styling celebrities and starring in reality TV. But his personal journey was even more dramatic than his makeovers. Charles married sister actress Tamara Mowry's twin, Tia's sister Tamara Mowry Housley, and their marriage lasted 7 years before ending in 2003. What happened next defied Hollywood norms. Instead of cutting ties, Charles and Tamara chose to continue living together even after their divorce. Theirs was a different kind of love, no longer romantic or sexual, but still rooted in care and loyalty. In his memoir, Charles explained it this way: "There is a different kind of love. It is not erotic love. It's not sexual, but it is love. It's making sure someone's okay and being there for them." Charles also became increasingly open about his bisexuality. During a candid 2011 appearance on The Wendy Williams Show, he laughed, "I've had many lovers. I'm 50 years old. I've done it all." While he never spotlighted specific male partners, he made no apologies for who he was. Elgin Charles' story proves that divorce doesn't have to end love. It can transform it. His willingness to embrace his identity while honoring past bonds shows that authenticity and compassion can exist side by side. Alan Cumming, the actor who chose chaos before love. Scottish actor Alan Cumming has never shied away from bold choices on stage or screen, but his personal journey was even braver. In 1993, his marriage to actress Hilary Lyon ended in divorce, freeing him to explore parts of his identity he had long suppressed. Cumming almost married again, this time to actress Saffron Burrows. But as he later admitted, that union would have been disastrous. Burrows, like Cumming, was bisexual, and both were navigating identities that didn't fit Hollywood's narrow expectations. Instead of repeating old patterns, Cumming embraced a period of what The Guardian called wholehearted hedonism. He experimented, explored, and lived without apology. This chaotic period wasn't just about indulgence, it was about discovering who he truly was. The search eventually led him to graphic artist Grant Schaffer, whom he met in 2005. Their connection was real, deep, and lasting. By 2007, they were married in London, creating a partnership that celebrated authenticity instead of suppressing it. Cumming's story reminds us that sometimes chaos is necessary. By rejecting the timeline society set for him, he created space to find real love on his own terms. His marriage to Schaffer proves that self-discovery, even if messy, can lead to the most genuine happiness. Ricky Martin, the Latin lover who finally lived his truth. In the 1990s, Ricky Martin was the global symbol of passion, charisma, and Latin charm. Women screamed his name as he performed Livin' La Vida Loca, and his 9-year relationship with Mexican TV host Rebecca de Alba convinced fans that he was the ultimate heartthrob. But behind the image, Martin was hiding a truth he could no longer deny. In interviews, Martin admitted that Rebecca knew he was gay, but still chose to stay with him. Their relationship existed in a gray space, genuine affection mixed with the pressures of maintaining a public illusion. For Martin, the weight of that performance became unbearable. In 2010, he shattered the facade with a simple but powerful statement: "I am proud to say that I am a fortunate homosexual man." The announcement was a turning point, freeing him to live authentically. In 2016, Martin found love with Swedish-Syrian artist Juan Josef after connecting on Instagram. Within a year, they were married, building a family together. From closeted superstar to proud husband and father, Martin's journey is one of the most significant coming-out stories in entertainment. He proved that even global icons can redefine themselves and inspire millions in the process. Lance Bass, from Vegas, mistake to televised love. As a member of NSYNC, Lance Bass spent the late 1990s selling the image of the perfect boy next door. But privately, he was struggling with who he really was. In fact, one of the strangest episodes of his closeted life came in Las Vegas, when he married a female friend on a whim. Bass later joked that the entire wedding lasted 5 minutes and was done for a ridiculous reason: free drinks? "We got no drinks," he admitted, laughing at the absurdity. To the outside world, it was a meaningless prank. To Bass, it reflected how disconnected he felt from his authentic self. Even in jest, he was playing a role, using heterosexual performance as camouflage. Years later, Bass embraced who he truly was. He came out publicly, fell in love with artist Michael Turchin, and in 2014, the couple's wedding became the first same-sex marriage televised on American TV. The event was a milestone, transforming what once was hidden into something celebrated. Lance Bass's journey from a Vegas stunt to a nationally televised love story shows the dramatic difference between living in disguise and living authentically. His story proves that when love is real, there's no need for performance. George Michael. From closeted idol to gay icon. George Michael was the face of 1980s pop. As one half of Wham! And later a solo superstar, he embodied charm, sex appeal, and mainstream success. To the public, his glamorous relationships with women, especially makeup artist Kathy Jung, seemed to confirm his status as a heterosexual heartthrob. But in private, George was living a very different story. For years, he remained closeted, terrified that revealing the truth would destroy his career. That illusion shattered in 1998 when he was arrested in a Beverly Hills park for lewd conduct. Rather than deny it, George turned the scandal into liberation, publicly acknowledging his homosexuality. In interviews afterward, he said the experience was a turning point. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life lying." From that moment, George Michael embraced authenticity. He entered long-term relationships with men, spoke openly about LGBTQ rights, and became an icon for a generation of fans who had lived in silence. His music, From Freedom to Outside, took on new layers of meaning as he aligned his art with his truth. When George died in 2016, the world mourned not just a brilliant artist, but a man who had finally found the courage to be himself. His legacy is one of music, honesty, and freedom. Neil Patrick Harris, from teen heartthrob to proud husband. In the 1990s, Neil Patrick Harris was America's boy genius, starring in Doogie Howser, M.D. At the time, he publicly dated women, projecting the image of a wholesome, straight young star. But beneath the surface, he was wrestling with an identity Hollywood wasn't ready for. That changed in 2006 when Harris came out as a very content gay man. The timing was bold. He had just joined the hit sitcom How I Met Your Mother, playing the womanizing Barney Stinson. Instead of ending his career, his honesty made him even more beloved. Fans admired the contrast between the role he played and the life he lived. Harris soon found love with actor and chef David Bertka. The couple married in 2014 and now raise twins together, sharing glimpses of their family life with warmth and humor. Neil Patrick Harris's story shows how far Hollywood has come. What once might have been a career-ending revelation became an inspiring chapter in his success. He proved that authenticity and professional triumph can go hand in hand, reshaping what it means to be a leading man in modern entertainment. Jim Nabors, the gentle star who waited for love. Jim Nabors, best known as Gomer Pyle from the 1960s sitcom Gomer Pyle, USMC, built a career on innocence and charm. On screen, he was the wide-eyed, good-natured country boy who made America laugh. Off-screen, however, Nabors kept a secret he guarded for most of his life. During his early fame, he was often linked to women publicly, part of the Hollywood tradition of protecting an actor's image. But behind the staged appearances, Nabors had found real love with Stan Cadwallader, a firefighter he met in the 1970s. For more than 38 years, the two built a quiet life together in Hawaii, far from Hollywood's glare. It wasn't until 2013, at the age of 82, that Nabors married Cadwallader in a private ceremony, shortly after same-sex marriage was legalized in Washington state. For Nabors, it wasn't about publicity. It was about finally having the right to honor a love that had endured for decades. When Nabors passed away in 2017, he left behind more than a beloved TV character. He left a story of quiet devotion, proving that sometimes the strongest love stories don't unfold under spotlights, but in the steady rhythm of a shared life. Victor Garber. The gentleman who came out. Quietly. Victor Garber has always been a familiar face, even if you didn't know his name. From Titanic's shipbuilder Thomas Andrews to mentor roles in Alias and Broadway musicals, he built a reputation as a reliable, sophisticated actor. For years, Garber attended events with women by his side, fitting the mold of Hollywood respectability. But beneath the surface, he was keeping part of himself private. That changed in 2012 when, during a casual interview, Garber simply acknowledged that he lived with his longtime partner, artist Rainer Andreessen. There was no press conference, no headline-making scandal, just quiet honesty. By the time he confirmed it, they had already been together for more than a decade. In 2015, they married, making official what had long been true. Garber's understated approach stands in stark contrast to Hollywood's history of forced secrecy and dramatic outings. His story wasn't about hiding in shame, but about waiting until the world caught up. Today, he's celebrated as much for his authenticity as his performances. Sometimes courage doesn't look like rebellion. It looks like living your life with grace, dignity, and finally, openness. For Victor Garber, authenticity was simply the next chapter in a long and steady career. Rock Hudson, the heartthrob who became a symbol. In the 1950s, no one embodied Hollywood masculinity quite like Rock Hudson. Tall, handsome, and charming, he starred in romantic comedies alongside Doris Day and earned an Oscar nomination for Giant. To the world, he was the ultimate ladies' man. But privately, Hudson's life told another story. In 1955, he married Phyllis Gates, his agent Henry Wilson's secretary, in what many biographers believe was a marriage of convenience. The union lasted just 3 years, and Hudson never remarried. Behind the scenes, he maintained discreet relationships with men, shielded by an industry determined to protect its most bankable star. That secrecy collapsed in 1985, when Hudson revealed he was battling AIDS. He became the first major celebrity to go public with the disease, forever changing how the world viewed the epidemic. His admission shocked fans, but also gave the crisis a human face, forcing a reluctant society to pay attention. Hudson died later that year at age 59. His legacy is twofold: a Hollywood leading man whose career was built on illusion, and a reluctant pioneer whose final act brought compassion and visibility to millions suffering in silence. Anthony Perkins, Psycho star, double life. Anthony Perkins will forever be remembered as Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, the shy, boyish man with a terrifying secret. Ironically, Perkins himself lived a life filled with secrets. In the 1950s and early 1960s, Perkins was romantically linked with several men, including actor Tab Hunter, before the studio system pressured him into more conventional public roles. In 1973, Perkins married photographer and actress Barry Berenson. They had 2 sons, and to the outside world, the marriage appeared happy. But behind the facade, Perkins's earlier same-sex relationships continued to define him. He never publicly acknowledged them, but biographers have since pieced together a portrait of a man caught between 2 identities. Perkins's life ended tragically in 1992 when he died of AIDS-related complications at age 60. 10 years later, even more tragedy struck when Barry Berenson was killed aboard one of the planes that struck the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. Anthony Perkins's story is layered with brilliance and heartbreak. A gifted actor, a devoted father, and a man unable to fully escape Hollywood's rigid expectations, he symbolizes the painful compromises forced upon queer men in an unforgiving era. Rupert Everett, honesty at a cost. Rupert Everett burst onto the screen in the 1980s with striking looks and magnetic charm. By the time he starred in My Best Friend's Wedding alongside Julia Roberts in 1997, he seemed poised to become a Hollywood leading man. But Everett's story took a different path. Earlier in his career, he had relationships with both men and women. Unlike many of his peers, Everett refused to hide. He came out publicly in the late 1980s, long before it was considered safe for actors. His honesty, however, came with consequences. In interviews, Everett admitted that being openly gay cost him roles. Hollywood wasn't ready to cast an out gay man as a romantic lead, no matter how talented. Still, Everett built a career on his own terms. He became an outspoken critic of the industry's hypocrisy and continued to work steadily in both film and theater. By refusing to play along with the system's unwritten rules, he traded superstardom for authenticity. Rupert Everett's journey stands as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration. He proved that honesty can come with sacrifices, but also with freedom, a choice that makes him a trailblazer in his own right. Richard Chamberlain, the Thornbird star, who waited too long. In the 1960s, Richard Chamberlain was television's golden boy, winning hearts as the handsome Dr. Kildare. Later, in The Thornbirds, he became an international heartthrob, embodying forbidden passion as a priest in love. To the public, Chamberlain's romances with women seemed to confirm his status as Hollywood's ideal leading man. But Chamberlain was hiding. For decades, he lived closeted, afraid that being honest about his sexuality would end his career. He maintained female companions in public while quietly building a private life with male partners. It wasn't until 2003, at age 69, that Chamberlain publicly came out in his memoir, Shattered Love. By then, he had been in a long-term relationship with producer Martin Rabbitt for years. His late-life honesty was both liberating and bittersweet, proof of how long Hollywood forced talented actors into silence. Chamberlain's story is a reminder of how far the industry has come and how much was lost in the decades of secrecy. His journey from matinee idol to openly gay elder statesman reflects not just personal courage, but the painful reality of a career lived in fear of exposure. Tab Hunter, heartthrob, behind the curtain. In the 1950s, Tab Hunter was Hollywood's golden boy. Blonde, athletic, and impossibly handsome, he was the kind of actor studios built entire careers around. Fans adored him, magazines featured him, and women were lined up to be linked with him. But much of that was smoke and mirrors. Hunter, like many actors of his era, dated women publicly as part of a carefully managed image. Behind the curtain, though, he was pursuing relationships with men, including a long-rumored romance with fellow actor Anthony Perkins. For decades, Hunter played the game, maintaining the illusion that Hollywood demanded. It wasn't until 2005 that the truth came fully into focus. In his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, he revealed his sexuality and spoke openly about the pain of living a double life. By then, he had spent more than 30 years with his partner, producer Alan Glazer. The two lived happily together until Hunter's death in 2018. Tab Hunter's story is one of survival and resilience. A man once trapped by an industry that valued image over truth, he eventually reclaimed his narrative on his own terms. His life reminds us that even in Hollywood, where fantasy reigns, authenticity can still shine through. Alan Turing, the genius who paid the ultimate price. Alan Turing wasn't a Hollywood star, but his story resonates as deeply as any. The British mathematician and codebreaker helped end World War II by cracking the Nazi Enigma code, saving countless lives. Yet, while he changed history, he couldn't escape the prejudices of his own time. In the 1940s, Turing briefly became engaged to Joan Clark, a fellow mathematician, but he called off the engagement, unable to deny the truth. He was attracted to men. At a time when homosexuality was a crime in Britain, Turing lived discreetly, balancing his groundbreaking work with a private life that carried enormous risk. In 1952, he was prosecuted for gross indecency after admitting to a relationship with another man. His punishment was chemical castration. 2 years later, he died by cyanide poisoning at just 41 years old. Whether by accident or suicide remains debated. Decades later, Turing was pardoned and celebrated as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. His story is a sobering reminder of the cost of secrecy and intolerance, and a tribute to the courage it takes to live authentically in hostile times. From Cary Grant to Tab Hunter, from Ricky Martin to Neil Patrick Harris, these 20 stories reveal a striking truth. Hollywood has long forced men to perform roles not just on screen, but in their personal lives. Some, like Rock Hudson and Anthony Perkins, paid the ultimate price for secrecy. Others, like Elton John and Lance Bass, eventually found the freedom to love openly and publicly. What unites them all is not scandal, but humanity. They entered marriages, built families, and cared deeply for the women in their lives, even as they searched for authenticity. Their decisions weren't betrayals. They were survival strategies in a world that often demanded masks. Over time, those masks began to fall. The courage of men like George Michael, Richard Chamberlain, and Rupert Everett paved the way for today's generation to live more freely. Now, stars like Neil Patrick Harris raise children with their husbands without fear, something unthinkable just decades ago. In the end, these men didn't just find love, they found themselves. And in doing so, they challenged Hollywood and the world to expand its definition of what it means to live truthfully.